Hello and welcome back to my Dandelion Diaries. I apologize for my voice in this video. I'm finally starting to get it back and I wanted to go ahead and share with you what I have inked up for the month of March. So I have 8 pens this month inked up and 8 different inks up here. I'm going to be swatching them in my 𝗤𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁 here in the Emma and Georgina. I do have lights on today because it is kind of stormy and gross outside, so the color may not be exact payoff, so just take what you see with a grain of salt when I do swatch the inks. But I like to think that my camera is pretty good at picking up what the natural hues are, even in artificial light. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with my very first pen, which is the Ferris Wheel Press Carousel in Unfettered Flight. This is a new release from Ferris Wheel Press that they kindly sent to me as part of their Jubilee program. They sent me this pen in a medium nib, and I have to say, it was actually not too terrible to write with so far this month. I've been enjoying it. I inked it up with the Ferris Wheel Press Goose Poupon, which is actually one of my favorite inks from Ferris Wheel Press. I love the color of this one, and it just has the right amount of shading, but I'll show more of that in a minute. I feel like that the medium nib on the Ferris Wheel Press typically write really dry, and usually the Ferris Wheel Press inks are really dry as well, but I find that some here and there do okay, and this was actually an okay pairing from what I experienced. Here is what the box of the Goose Poupon looks like. I love this ink. It was my first look at a dupe of 𝗏𝗏𝗏 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. I really love the packaging from Ferris Wheel Press. I feel like it's very artistic. I will say that probably plays a lot into their price because the price of the inks are a little bit more expensive again. But this is what the bottle looks like. It is Goose Poupon. I love the brass caps. And I'm just going to go ahead and do my big swatch like I normally do with all of my currently inked videos that I've been doing. Ferris Wheel Press Goose Poupon is like a nice olivey, like warm yellowy green color. I sadly have a partner who likes to call it diarrhea brown, but ultimately this is actually one of my favorite colors to write with just because it's very dynamic. It has a lot of different color to it, a lot of different shade, and I really enjoy that. I say this is kind of a dupe for 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 because it does have very similar tone, but in truth, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is much more of a yellow base, and this one is a little bit more of a green base. So they're close, but definitely not the same ink. Overall, the consistency of this Ferris Wheel Press ink is not necessarily super dry. I find that it's actually pretty mediocre in the middle. It's not super wet, like flowy, but it's not super dry either. So I don't mind it either way, and like I said, it is one of my favorite colors that Ferris Wheel Press has produced. In terms of the shading, I absolutely adore the shading on this one. It has a range of kind of like a beigey color to a darker olivey green. Usually I get most of the beige in writing. I don't really get any of the darker green color. That just only shows up in the swatch. And I really, like I said, enjoy this one. The next pen I had inked up is my TWSBI Eco in Persian green, and this has Birmingham Pen Company's Weeping Willow. And this pen and ink pairing is probably one of my favorites that I have in the group today. Probably because of this ink. I have been obsessed with the Birmingham Pen Company inks for a while now, but again, I'll move that into the ink swatching portion of this. But as in terms of like the pen writing with itself, the extra fine nib on the TWSBIs typically are a bit broader, more towards the fine, even medium size sometimes. And with the BPC ink being a bit more of a wet flowing ink, it turned really pretty with the shading in this ink. And yeah, I really enjoyed this combination. If you were to order the bottle of the Weeping Willow, this is the box that it comes in. It's just a standard white box. I do like the texture on these. I wrote Weeping Willow on the top of mine just because I like to keep the boxes and I don't want to mix it up with other inks. This is what the bottle looks like. I love that they have this kind of like receipt paper vintage stamp look for all of their bottles. They're run by two guys, Nick and Josh, and I adore their shop. Yes. One thing that I find fascinating about this ink in specific is the color shift that happens when you first write with it. So when you're first putting it down on the page, it's kind of like a green color. And then as it dries, it turns into this kind of like beigey, warm olive in a way. It is so cool and so dynamic. It is Oh, I love this one. I would say in the big swatch you get a lot of different shading, and in writing with this extra fine nib I got some shading, but honestly not a whole lot. I think if you put this in something like a broad nib or even a stub, you would get a lot of that beautiful different dual tone going on in your writing, but I was really happy with this even in an extra fine nib. I think Birmingham Pen Company is slowly becoming probably my favorite brand of ink, and I've tried a lot of ink out there, and it hurts me that it's not available to more people. So I'm trying to be quiet with my bias, but I must say that I'm really falling in love a lot with the Birmingham Pen Company inks. The next pen that I have inked up is my Laban Rosa in Lilac. I inked this up with Dominant Industries Yellow or Citrus Yellow. So my Laban Rosa is in a medium nib, and the pairing of the medium with the citrus yellow color of Dominant Industry was actually very legible for me, and that's one thing that I was kind of worried about by pairing these two together. I really wanted a bright yellow to go with the theme that I had for this month, and I was really, I don't know, iffy on which pen I should have put yellow in, but my Laban Rosa is always juicy, it's always well flowing, and I figured it would be really good, almost acting like a broad in a way with Dominant Industry inks, which are also very juicy and very well flowing. Overall, the color of Citrus Yellow by Dominant Industry is like sunshine yellow. It is kind of like a goldish, like orangey undertone to it. It does have a sheen that is kind of like a yellowy orange color, and ultimately it is just very bright and very happy in terms of a yellow. I like to think of it as citrus yellow is a good name for this. It is kind of like the rind of a lemon, but not quite super yellow. It's legible in this medium Laban. I haven't tried it in anything finer than this, honestly. This is probably my first time using this ink as it is a new yellow to my collection, and I must say I like it, but I don't think it's worth a bottle to me personally, just because I have some other yellows I like more. But for the color scheme that I was going with for this month, this yellow was the perfect match for what I was going for. The next pen I had inked up is my Esterbrook Estie in Rainforest. This is, I think they only have it in the gold trim, actually. I'm not sure now. But it has a medium nib, and this is inked up with Diamine's Flame. I have talked about the Esterbrook Estie a lot on my channel. It's actually one of my favorite pen models. It's really comfortable in my hand. The weight of it's really nice. I love the feel of the resin on these models. I have several Esterbrook Esties, if I'm being honest, and the Rainforest is probably my favorite colorway just because it's kind of like yellowy green and very earthy looking, but the medium nib is a little bit too broad for me most of the time. But I really wanted to have a nice like broad orange color again to go along with my color scheme that I'm going with. So this was a good fit for the Diamine Flame and the Esterbrook Estie medium nib together. I would say I think this orange is really bright though, so let me get to the ink swatch and I'll show a little bit more about that. So this is the bottle of Diamine Flame that I have. It's just the ink vent bottle, the 12, I think it's 12 milliliter one. This was the green 2022 ink vent, I believe. It is a standard ink. There's nothing really exciting about it other than the little bit of shading that it has. Overall, the color of Diamine Flame is vibrant and bright and orange. It is in your face orange. I think flame is a really good name for this, honestly, because it is like a bright orange flame from a fire. The shading that it has is pretty minimal, and it's usually just kind of like shades of orange. I've never had it lean too far yellow or too far red, but in the medium nib of the Estie, it does show up with the little bits of shading that it does have. It's pretty flat. There's no sheen or anything that I remember from this ink. I never got sheen in the writing, at least. If there is any in the swatch, then it's likely just a very minimal amount. But overall, the pairing of Diamine inks to Esterbrook Estie pens has always been a win for me. I've never had problems with either pairing, no matter what ink I use from Diamine and no matter which Estie I am using. I think that they're a great pairing together. Diamine's a great affordable ink, and like I said, I have all the love for Esterbrook Estie pens. The next pen I had inked up in my March currently inked is my Sailor Compass 1911 in transparent olive. This is the, I guess, starter pen of the Sailor line, and I have this in a medium fine. And I decided to ink this pen up with Sailor Shikiori's Sakura Mori because I really wanted to have a nice pink to go along with my color scheme. Not necessarily my favorite combination, if I'm being honest. I feel like it was a little too fine for what I wanted, which is kind of weird because I don't typically have that experience with this pen. And Sailor inks, I've never, like even this ink, I've used it before in a fine nib and an extra fine nib, and I've never had it be this fine. So I don't know if I didn't clean my pen well enough or what happened, but it wasn't as juicy as I was hoping. Or maybe it was the other pens I was writing with was more, like everything else was better flowing than this one. I don't know. In terms of the color of Sailor Shikiori Sakura Mori, it is a beautiful petally pink color. I definitely think this is 100% Sakura pink. It has a little bit of shading going on with it, ranging from kind of like a more medium pink to a lighter pink, and is ultimately quite a stunning ink and a big swatch. I found that in the Sailor Compass pen with the medium fine nib, again, it just wasn't as juicy as I wanted, and I'm starting to think about this more and more as I'm talking, and I think it is because every other pen that I wrote with had a level of juiciness to it, and this was just a really extra fine writing pen compared to everything else I was using. So no shame to the combo. It was actually really pleasant to write with. I enjoyed writing with it. It's just, I think I wanted it to be a little bit juicier because everything else I was writing with was juicier, but I mean, Sailor medium fine nibs are classic. They're great for tiny writing. I think I'm finding more and more that I'm leaning more towards the broader nibbed pens now versus the more fine nibbed pens, but it's all about a pen journey, which, you know, I will share, by the way, at some point in my 8 pen questions video that's going to come up at some point. The next pen I had inked up is my Pilot Metropolitan in Purple Leopard, and this had a medium nib. And I decided to ink this up with Rohrer and Klingner's Solferino. And I just have to say, I think this is my favorite purple ink I've ever put in this purple pen. And I don't have a lot of purple pens. I have 2. It's this one and a TWSBI. And I never thought to put this ink in this pen until now. And I'm so happy that I did. Rohrer and Klingner's Solferino is vibrant, punchy red purple, and it is so absolutely stunning in this medium pilot nib. I adored writing with this. Honestly, I think I'm almost out of this ink in the pen, and I'm not even halfway through the month or just barely half over at this point. I would say that the Rohrer and Klingner inks that I've used in any size nib have always been well flowing, and they are a really reasonable price, but their colors are, I don't know how to describe them. They have like a vibrancy to them, a saturation, but they're not so saturated that it's overwhelming. I hope that makes sense. But this color, if I were to compare it to something, is honestly kind of like a purple pansy color, or even like a bright, vibrant purple flower in the garden, even a purple iris. I feel like it has a very floral purple to it. I don't know what Solferino stands for, so if anybody wants to educate me in the comments on that, I would love to know. But this ink in specific just has some beautiful shading and a very minor green sheen that I honestly don't have show up in any writing ever. It just only shows up in the swatch and looks really cool. But the color of this is just so beautiful and so unique, just incredibly unique. The second to last pen that I had inked up is my Jinhao 82 in black gold, and this is in a fine, hold on. Yes, in a fine nib. And I inked this up with Monteverde's Blue Horizon, which I believe is a Goulet Pens exclusive. Honestly, this ink pairing reminded me a lot of like my school days, like when I was in college or high school, and I'd be writing with that bright blue pen that everybody had, right? And taking notes. This is like that perfect blue shade of writing notes. I don't know how else to describe that. The pairing of the Monteverde ink with the Jinhao has been fine. I didn't notice any dryness or hard starts or any kind of issues with flow whatsoever. It was a decent combination. I didn't have any issues. It wasn't in my top just because I think it kind of matched that Sailor Compass pen, that it was a little too, I don't know, I wanted more from it, I guess. But overall, the color and the pen together was kind of fun just because it was like your classic black pen with blue ink in a way. I don't know. Overall, the color of Monteverde's Blue Horizon is this beautiful, bright, oceanic deep blue color. Honestly, it reminds me a lot of like a sunrise over the ocean, where the ocean's kind of like that kind of blue, like true blue color. It does have a bit of a red sheen in some areas. It's not super strong, and I've honestly never had it show up in writing, but the shading in this is kind of pretty. It goes from like a more light bright blue to a deeper bright blue, and it doesn't really have a lean towards the red or green side whatsoever. It just is true kind of neutral blue in tone. Honestly, this is a really good primary color blue if you wanted to use this for mixing with other Monteverde inks. I think it's a really nice, solid blue color. And the last pen I had inked up is my Kaweco Sport in Smooth Sage with a broad nib, and I inked this up with Robert Oster's Wind. And if you saw my latest video about the 𝗦𝘂𝗽𝗽 pen that I got and inked up Wind with, I decided to gift that pen to my boyfriend because he was eyeballing it for just ever. So I gifted it to him, and so I don't have that one in my lineup for this month. But I really wanted to continue to play with this ink, so I decided to put it in this Kaweco Sport with the broad nib, and I must say this is such an epic combination because the shading in this ink is just incredible. So I picked up this bottle of Robert Oster's Wind from Atlas Stationers. I do have a code with them. It's Danielle10 if you want to save 10%. And this is such a cool ink because of the shading properties that it has. It is just, it's so cool. And I honestly want to get the other ones from this line, like the Earth, Water, and Fire. I think all 4 from this collection was really good. And I definitely want to get some more of them. So Robert Oster's Wind has this incredible dual tone shift in it. It is ultimately a light blue color, maybe even like a periwinkle, and it has this pink shading to it. And it was so much fun to write with this pen so far this month. I'm over the moon with how this has turned out. So it is really nice in this broad nib because it's showing all of the shading. Every time I write with it, I get a range from that blue to pink to kind of like a purple shade in there somewhere too. It is so much fun to write with in this broad nib. And in the big swatch, as it dries down, hopefully you'll be able to see the different kind of pink splotches throughout it. It shades everywhere. Like, it's not just going to shade in the pooly places, it shades the whole thing. And I was really excited about that. Ultimately, this pairing with the broad-nibbed Kaweco and the Wind from Robert Oster was a really good one, and I would definitely be re-inking this up. Maybe not in the Smooth Sage model. I may take this broad nib and put it in my iridescent model, because I feel like that would be really fun to look at between like the iridescence of the pen and then almost the iridescence of this ink. So now comes the point in the video where I get to share what I've named my color scheme with you guys. And ultimately, I went back and forth on what I wanted to do for March, because March is when everything turns to spring. It's when it gets really green outside. I wanted to do, I don't know, I started off thinking I wanted to do like a range of greens like I did last month with a range of pinks. And I was like, no. I don't want to do monochrome. I want to do another rainbow. Rainbows are always really fun for me because you get to pick whatever color you want to write with. And honestly, I love all the colors. So having all the colors is always fun. So I thought, okay, well, what about March as something that's really significant? And I thought about the sun, because in the winter here in Texas, it's not necessarily horrible. Like, we don't get snow that often, and it's not really dreary and really cold, but we do get a lot of cloudy days. So come spring, the sun really starts to shine. So I wanted to name this a sunny day, and I really wanted to have a range of colors that would be shown in the sun as like a bright color. And it's funny that I'm filming this on like a stormy day, but it's fine. So the green is kind of like a grassy green. The brownish olive color would be kind of like the new bark and the new leaves forming. Yellow for the sun, orange for the halo around the sun or sunrises, like the pink and orange together could be a nice sunrise or a sunset. And same with the blues and purples, could be a nice sunrise or sunset, or just the different hues of the sky at the different times of the day. And I was really happy with this combination. I felt like it was muted and bright at the same time, and ultimately I feel like a sunny day is what I want to go with for naming it, because that is what I thought of when I was coming up with this color scheme in the first place. Overall, I must say I was really happy with the color scheme that I picked. I enjoyed writing with all of these pens. I would say probably my least favorites were the Sailor Compass and the Jinhao 82, but that's fine. And my most favorites were the Weeping Willow with the TWSBI Extra Fine, and probably the Pilot Metropolitan with the Solferino. I really enjoyed those two as my top two. And third place would probably go to the Kaweco with the Wind, because the ink is just so dynamic and very, very cool. It's like a darker version of Sailor Moon haha, actually, now that I look at it. If you agree with my sunny day kind of description of the inks, thank you. Otherwise, I would love to hear whatever kind of name you want to come up with for this color scheme. I always enjoy seeing the creativity you guys have when it comes to the colors that I pick and what names you think would better fit them. So let me know down in the comments what you think would be a good name for this if you don't agree with a sunny day. If you're interested in other ink explorations that I've done or other ink videos, I have a couple of playlists that I'll try to leave in the description. I do like to play with my fountain pen inks a lot because they're just really fun and I like sharing my collection with you all. But anyways, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, for joining me here today, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.